Hi, everyone. Welcome to the moon forecast for the super blood moon in Sagittarius. That's happening May 26th. I'm Kendall Shawhan with the Bohemian Tarot Girl, and this is Amy. Amy, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Amy Amonette, and I'm an intuitive energy coach and have been leading moon circles for a couple of years now. And so we always like to get together and talk about what to expect and how to flow better with the upcoming moon energy. So
Yeah.
this one's a big one.
It is. It is. Make sure if you enjoy this video to like it and subscribe. We'd really appreciate the support. Also, if you're interested in tarot cards, I just did a deck and it's out on Kickstarter. Please, if you're interested, it's there. I'd appreciate any support from you guys. And I'm going to be using them in the card of the day later on in this forecast. So, well, let's get started and talk about this energy and like what.
Oh, yeah.
I was a little worried and I felt better.
I really don't think a full moon could get any more potent than this one. It's a super moon, which means it's really close to the earth. It's on Gemini and it's Sagittarius full moon, which means that the moon is in Sagittarius and it's opposing the sun, which is in Gemini. And so we have these kind of alternate conflicting energies that do work well together. I mean, they do. Gemini is an air sign and Sagittarius is a fire sign. And so they do have ways of complementing each other. They just have two different approaches to energy. And so we're kind of going to look at that and see how to best utilize that. And not only all of that, but this is also a full lunar eclipse that is happening at the same time. This moon will be full on May 26th at 4:15 a.m. Pacific time, which is where we are. So adjust that accordingly to wherever you are.
I guess the Australians and if you're in New Zealand, they will see the eclipse.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in those areas,
it's happening at 5 degrees. So if you are a little more aware of astrology and want to take a look at where that is in your chart, you can also pull up a free chart online and see where that happens if you know your birth date. Where that happens in your chart is where you're going to be seeing the most change in development over this eclipse cycle. So you want to take a look at that. I did take a look at mine and it was pretty interesting to see which houses this fell in and kind of the areas that might be most affected. So,
yeah. And if it's in your rising or your ascendant or your moon, then really prepare.
Yeah. So I feel like there's a lot to unpack with this and a lot of information to be giving. And so I'm going to try and make it as easy to understand as possible and kind of hit on the key points. Let's see where to begin. Take a look at my notes really quick. If I can.
Sure. I mean, do you know why it's called a blood moon?
I don't.
It is because in a lunar eclipse, the shadow between the earth and the sun it creates this like blood cast over the moon, like a blood colored cast. So that's why it's called a blood moon. It only happens during lunar eclipses. So.
Which I think a lot of times is really considered a very like bad omen. And I don't think it is, though. I generally the feel of this moon is that it's going to be very, very potent energy and very kind of like a catalyst for some major changes that are going to be upcoming. But there's like a sense of it being very rooted in like the universe's plan for you.
Yep.
It can be very healing and very supportive. But there is a level of trust that comes with this, because well, Gemini, like, they can get like really worked up about the details, and they want to see the plan, and they want to know how things are going to happen. I live with a Gemini, so it's very much rooted in, like, what is you can physically see and what is very material. And the energy that's coming in with this is not necessarily going to be something that you can foresee or expect, or have be very tangible with what's happening. It's going to take a level of like trust and release, and kind of like that, you know, the trust falls that you do in like team building. It's like
I like
you
that.
have to know that yeah, you're just gonna have to do the free fall, and hope that, and not hope, I mean, it will. Yeah. I mean, you do have to hope, but you have to know that as you are letting go and falling into this, that there's going to be the universe right underneath you, kind of ready to catch you and put you in a better position.
Yeah.
So there's I was receiving a lot of messages with this full moon, and I was kind of like trying to piece together all the information, because that's a very Gemini energy thing to
Yeah.
do. Is it has a lot to do with communication and information, and they want to like gather as much information about things as possible, and sometimes that can prevent them from moving forward. And so when we look at like the opposing qualities of Gemini and Sagittarius, like Gemini, they want to communicate, and they want to talk about ideas, and they want to gather ideas, and they want to gather facts and information, and everything is like kind of like laid out in a black and white sort of way, like this is reality and this is how things are. And then you have Sagittarius, and Sagittarius being a fire sign, it's very action oriented, but it's looking for the highest truth, not necessarily all the facts. Like, it's doesn't get bogged down with facts so much. And it wants to, like, it's a very adventurous and freedom oriented energy. And sometimes I feel like Sagittarius can kind of go out and do things without necessarily thinking about it too much. Like, they don't necessarily think about the consequences. It's very it's like Aries energy, but a little more developed.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have these, like, a lot of masculine, they're both masculine signs.
Mhm.
So we have a lot of like masculine, forward thinking, movement oriented energy with this moon. um, and it's also about full moons, we always are releasing. And so when I was thinking about this, it's kind of like, the way, what do you need to release for this full moon? What is going to come up are maybe the ways in which you talk yourself out of doing things. What is your self-talk? How do you
Yeah.
um like, do you get bogged down with the details, instead of just acting on what it is you want to be doing? And I know I'm guilty of that
Oh, for
completely.
sure.
So
We
that's
all
going to
are.
be one of the things to look at.
Yeah. No, that's
And
definitely what I was feeling. I was feeling a lot of like, what you sow is what you reap kind of thing. So it was an encouragement to move forward in the things that really call to you. And that is where you're going to see that positive energy come through. Whereas, if you're not moving and you're bogging yourself down, you're not going to see that growth. Or you're going to see basically the universe shoving you somewhere that you need to go, which can be very rattling. So, and Amy and I are both feet draggers. If you
oh,
don't
for
know.
sure. Yeah, I am definitely a sit back and wait and see, or wait for what feels like the right time. But sometimes I can prolong that for
Yep.
way longer than it needs to be. Um, and so I'm actually really looking forward to this energy because I think it's going to give that needed momentum to actually start moving forward into something that feels more authentic and meant for you. Um,
Love that.
I kept thinking of like the quote, like "Let go or be dragged."
Yep.
Um, I I think a lot of a lot of times we look at major changes, especially if you're someone who doesn't like change or wants to kind of
Control.
anticipate change, or you don't necessarily like to step out of your comfort zone. Um, we can kind of get a little stuck, and this energy, especially with it being an eclipse. I always think of eclipses in particular. It's like it's a portal. You are entering a door, and where you end up on the other side of this is going to look completely different. And it's like fast tracking you through a situation. Um, it's also, like being at the airport and getting on the moving walkway. Like things are going to be happening for you way faster than normal. Um, and it can kind of feel a bit a bit intense for some people, and some people it's like, you can, I think a lot of times, I'm just gonna backtrack a little bit, but a lot of times when people look at these moons, they want to label them as having good energy or having bad energy. And energy is not good or bad. It either aligns with you or it doesn't align with you. And you either learn to align with it or you get really resistant with it. And I think, and I know for myself, the more that I've begun to align with the energies of each moon, the flow of how things go, and how receptive I am to the changes that are trying to occur in my life, um, it goes so much more smoothly. And so I'm hoping that through these videos, you're starting to see how things are transpiring and you're able to align a little bit better, and that the flow in your life is happening a little more easily. So,
I like that. And I totally agree. It was almost life changing when I started paying attention to, the energy and the astrology, because you realize why you were feeling certain ways and why you were being pulled in certain ways. And knowing that instead of resisting it, you can work with that energy. So it's so important to pay attention to this. I don't know if I would charge my crystals during this moon though. So that would be the only thing, just because of the it's kind of like a little more chaotic. It's a good energy, but it's a little bit, it's propelling you. So it's not traditionally something that you would want to, go ahead and put your crystals out. And so I just avoid that situation personally.
yeah, I wouldn't charge crystals. Um, unless well, I don't want to tell you what to do because you're going to do what feels right for you. But I personally would not charge my crystals, and
Mhm.
I would not make moon water, and I would not try and create any intentions with this one. I mean, full moons are generally for releasing anyway. And so this is going to be, there's so much that's going to be happening. And like there's so many other energies that are at play right now that we haven't even started to discuss. So
Yes.
we should probably talk about that before we.
Yeah, let's get into all that training stuff. So you want to talk
Yeah.
about
So
Neptune and
eclipses happen when um, you're dealing with the nodes, and this cycle lasts about 18 months, and it actually started last June. On June 5th we had our first um eclipse in this cycle, and so we're already kind of in the middle of whatever transitioning is happening. But this one in particular, being a full lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, we're going to see the culmination of this in December when we have this another Sagittarius eclipse. and that'll be a solar eclipse. And it's like this moon in particular, we do have a lot of Gemini energy, because not only do we have the sun in Gemini, but we also have Venus and Mercury in Gemini. Gemini, why do I always say that wrong? Mercury, Gemini is ruled by Mercury. That's Gemini is ruled by Mercury. And so it's in its home sign. So that is already like an extra burst of mental stimulation that's happening. But then right after this moon, Mercury is going to go retrograde in its own sign. So that, you know, if usually when I'm going to blame the planets on something, it's going to be when Mercury is retrograde, because that one happens more often than most. It happens like 3 to 4 times a year. And so not only are we going to have this big kind of release of things that's happening, but then Mercury is going to go retrograde. And that kind of is a time for like reintegration and going over things again. It's a good time to kind of like retreat and not make any major decisions about things. So there's kind of like this holding pattern that's going to happen around this moon, where we want to kind of reflect, retreat, reintegrate knowledge that maybe we've recently had, or epiphanies, or all of this stuff. In 2 weeks, when we have the new moon, that is actually another eclipse. It is a solar eclipse. So that will be the time when things really start gaining a little more ground, with these big transitions that are happening. But first, before, we always say this, before you can move into something new, you have to let go of something to make space for it.
Even finishing projects.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if you have some outstanding things that are just lingering you and potentially like preventing you from easily moving into another phase, this is a good time for that. It wouldn't be necessarily a time to start something new. It's more about finishing up. So
yeah, reevaluating, reassessing, like all the R's. Retrograde. So a lot of people kind of, and I do too, like, oh crap, you know, Mercury's in retrograde again. Here we go. Just pay attention to like communication getting maybe turned around or miscommunicated. Pay attention to transportation. There could be like more road work or accidents, or things that might make you like late to work. Issues with your car, technology, make sure your computers are backed up. Like these are things that kind of tend to be affected by Mercury retrograde. And it's just that once you're aware of that, it's like it doesn't seem like it's necessarily something that's happening to you for no reason. Like it's like, oh, you energy right now. I swear something always happens to my car, and we're going to change that thought. It's not.
Yeah, no,
I would be fine.
Yeah, that was actually how I first kind of like realized the pattern of Mercury retrograde was actually through my car, when I was oblivious to the energy. And then once I started paying attention to it, now I'm kind of like, I'm with you. Got to change that thought pattern. You don't want to bring that into you. So, you know, got to be careful.
Yeah. So not only do we have that energy happening with this full moon lunar eclipse, and Mercury retrograde happening, but we have 2 major long cycle planets, Jupiter and Neptune, which are in Pisces. And Jupiter has recently, last couple of weeks, and that is a longer term energy. And it's Pisces, Jupiter amplifies everything. and it's a very good luck planet.
Mhm.
Pisces is all about intuition. It's about dreams. It's about spirituality, connecting to your spirituality. And so this is going to be amplified through this, but it's also making a square to this eclipse. And a square is kind of a tense sort of energy. And so you can really easily get caught up in the should I trust what I feel like I know, or should I trust my intuition? It's very much a mental knowing versus an intuitive knowing.
Mhm.
And I feel like in this moon, it's going to be really important to take a look at how you receive your intuitive information, and how different that feels compared to your mental information. And then allowing, like, you may not have all of the information you need right now in order to make these big decisions or move in a certain direction. And that's kind of where that trust process comes in, of really figuring out, okay, like this feels good and I'm going to do this, without really knowing how it's going to play out for you, or really being able to anticipate what that's going to look like, because there are things happening, I feel, behind the scenes right now that are really working in your favor. And when I was looking and researching this eclipse, I saw that the last time we had this same eclipse cycle was in, I wrote down the dates here, October 13th of 2001 to April 14th of 2003. And I think sometimes it's good to go back and see what was happening in your life during those times, so that you can kind of like see what transpired and how you changed, and how your world shifted during that transit. And I have to admit, when I first when I first saw those dates, it scared me a little, because for me personally, like that couple of years, I mean, I was 23, 24. Um, and I remember that time, I look back at it and I look at it as being like one of the hardest points to go through for myself. Um, and so there was a little bit of like this nervous anxiety that popped up when I saw the dates, because like, oh, what is going to happen? And then I also looked past that and saw how all of those big events at the time that seemed really hard to go through changed everything about my life from that point on. Like, I
Mhm.
can look at it, and I always say this about eclipses, is that, there's who you are when this starts is not going to be who you are when this is over, because the change will be so dramatic. Um, after like after all of that, like I realized like everything that had happened had set me up to move into the person that I was going to be being, like my career. It opened the doors for rediscovering my spirituality. It made me kind of check in with my intuition and recognize it and honor it more and develop it into what it is. And so, if somebody's feeling like whatever's happening around them is really traumatic or really scary or really daunting, like there is a reason behind it. And also, going through some really hard things or some major changes like that gives you the ability to kind of grow into your own strengths, and experience grace for yourself, um, and so many other things. Like, it's like so transformational. And I feel like this moon in particular and what's going to transpire over the next 6 months is going to be hugely transformational for the person that you're becoming.
Yeah.
And so allowing whatever needs to fall away or whatever needs to um, be released from your life. And that can even be thoughts about yourself. It can be beliefs that you've been holding on to that no longer resonate. Like it doesn't need to be something physical. It can be something very personal and spiritual to yourself, especially with this Pisces energy that's coming into play.
Yeah.
So,
And then we also have Saturn going retrograde too during this time. And that is about like a 4.5 month energy as well. And that with Saturn, it's very much like karma related. And so you think about, it's the ruler of karma. And so bringing that into what you were saying about this other energy and combining that, it's just, you can't think of karma as like, I think people have a tendency to either think like, oh, you've only done good, so then you're going to return good, that sort of thing. But there is a natural flow to your life with karma, and you're bringing in things, and you're becoming that person.
mhm.
And so, to me, that's part of it too. You're going to go through this process with the reflection and the transition that Saturn's going to bring. It's very interesting how all of this energy is really coming together, and they almost like match and complement.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, and
And the
that's
series,
yeah,
the series of events from moon to moon, because when we talked about, like in Pisces, we were talking about starting to dream, and then Aries, it was like planting seeds, and Taurus, it was laying the foundation. And now I feel like this is the push to like fast track the next part. And so the synchronicities of all of these planets and the way that they're interacting with each other and the energies that they're bringing, it's really, really significant.
it is. I'm hoping that it's not going to be a hard time for myself personally,
Yeah.
but also for all of you out there. Do you, Amy, do you want to talk about the journal prompts that we're going to do, and then I'll do a card here.
Yeah. So we have some journal prompts that we're going to put up on the site. And I do have some written down, but I think sometimes it's easier if you like go and look at the paper and like really kind of dive into them. But it's the ones that I was like kind of was, how do you recognize your intuitive voices versus your mental voice? Like how do you decipher when you're kind of seeing things mentally versus feeling them intuitively? um what do you find yourself talking yourself out of right now? Like where are you kind of like trying so hard to look at the details and that how things are going to happen instead of just actually like trusting and diving forward? um and what is keeping you from leaping forward, and how can you better trust and follow your intuition? So we'll have those up for you so you can really kind of take like get thoughtful with them and write them down. um for this moon in particular, I didn't feel like it was necessarily a moon for releasing rituals, because there's obviously you can work on releasing things, but I feel right now it's most important to pay attention to what information you're receiving intuitively,
Yeah.
because things are going to be popping up that maybe you hadn't thought of before. um and especially with Pisces being where it's at, that is very associated with dreaming. So if you have not started a dream journal, like I would suggest getting a notepad or something and start keeping track of any dreams that you have or that you remember and kind of what you feel about them. Um, and then any other messages or synchronicities that are happening in your life. Maybe you start seeing like a particular animal, or numbers keep popping up, or you're thinking about something and somebody calls and wants to talk to you about that. Like there's so many ways that we get information, and so to really pay attention to what information you're getting.
Yeah.
Make sure I have everything here. So I kept writing the same thing over and over again. And it was trust the process and trust the universe. And I think that's really the key to take away here, is that everything is happening for your highest good, and you can either be resistant to what's happening, or you can really align and flow with it. And so the quote that because you know me and quotes, the one that came up with this one, besides the let go and be dragged, was one that I'd seen before, and it was, what if I fall, but oh darling, what if you fly? And we're at this point right now where I think everybody is getting ready to take off in something that is so meant for you, and so you just have to like take that leap. Like,
yes,
you're gonna be okay.
Don't resist the change.
Mm-hmm.
The card I pulled, let's see if I can get it in there, is the 7 of Pentacles. And this is all about, this is your garden. And so this is your long-term investments, and it's coming to fruition, and you're receiving that kind of reward. So, with this time, if you're building and finishing up projects and moving towards your goal, you're going to see the rewards. That's very karmic.
Perfect. Yeah.
It's all about that long-term investment.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what the Taurus new moon was leading up to also. So yeah, we're just like continuing on that path of the energy pushing you towards what's meant.
Yes, I like it. Well, thank you, Amy, for joining me today. And thank you everyone out there for joining us. Remember that you can get connected with Amy and I in the link below. Amy does intuitive readings. I do tarot readings. Also, I'll have the link for my cards if you're interested in purchasing them. Make sure you stay connected with us. So thanks, everyone, and have a grateful moon.